Hey yo, what it div, y'all? Let's get right into it. So today I want to talk about the private league I played and how the experience of playing with no magic rare items actually felt. Because I did just make that bold ass claim in my previous video about how rare items don't really matter in PoE like as drops anymore. And I will be honest, I embellished a little bit for the sake of like theatrics and whatnot. But the reality is that most rare item drops actually don't matter. There's a, and at the point in the game that I was talking about, it definitely doesn't matter. And it astonished me from playing this league how soon they stopped mattering. And that's why I made that previous video before I made this video to actually talk about why these things don't matter. Because you only really feel the lack of it in a specific part of the game, really, really early on in the game in your progression, before all of the other problems that are really posed in this method, with a couple exceptions, are able to be worked around, right? And so, before we get into that, look, if you like these videos, you're interested in the content, like, comment, subscribe to support the channel, all that good stuff, as well as if you do subscribe, turn notifications on so that you can know when we're posting more here on the channel. Let's get into it. We have to start by actually talking about the modifier. It's the only modifier in my private league, and it just says in game, when you open up a zone, it does just in the tab modifier list, it says items cannot drop as magic or rare. And it's an interesting modifier because the first question that we had was literally, what does that actually mean? Does it scour the items? Does it delete the items? What are we going to get out of it? I'm going to tell you what my initial interpretation of it is, like as of right now. I still want to do more testing with it. I'm actually kind of making this video in hopes that other people who have played this league before or are more curious about it will do some research or tell me about their research into the modifier to learn more about what this modifier entails, because I think it's a really cool way to play the game that I just don't have enough information about at this moment. But the general knowledge that I have right now tells me that an item is dropped if it is confirmed, if it, rolls on the rarity tables and everything as a magic or rare item, it will then drop, what do you call it? It drops as a rare item, for example. Now, the game says it can't drop as a rare item, but stay with me here. Conversion effects apply first. So if the item would be six-socketed, that's when it gets converted to a six-socket. If the item would be fractured, that's when it becomes fractured. If the item would be veiled, that's when it becomes veiled, right? Etc. All of the conversion modifiers, even the ones that turn that rare into gold, apply at this stage. Then the modifier scours it and you get a base. This is mildly inconsistent because I do believe that there are some cases where I'm pretty sure items just straight up didn't exist. And maybe it's because they rolled into a conversion that rolled the number very low, for example. Just specifically, we talked about this in the league actually about our Merveil kills, where it felt like we just saw literally less items than we thought we would have seen under this idea of them being scoured. But it could just be a conversion to gold that rolled 0. Not really sure about that. If anybody has any better ideas, let me know, right? But the general idea is that rare items go through all of the other shenanigans first and then get scoured. This is very important for how we're going to make King's get done. There's also a second rule to this, which is that not every item that drops is subjected to this rule. Drops, air quotes. We need to redefine drops here in order to understand a little bit better what the fuck this modifier means. Drops, as I'm able to interpret it at the moment with some assistance from friends and people in the league and all that stuff, is loot that can be directly attributed to a monster or chest. Specifically monster or chest. And things that are coded as monsters or chests, because not every chest is a chest, so to speak, right? There's armory containers and whatnot, but things that are programmed as chests don't drop rares. Now, what does that actually mean? So you kill a betrayal member. They would drop you a veiled item. However, they are a monster. Their item gets scoured. Related to this, if you kill a betrayal member, they are the last member in that betrayal encounter, and they offer you the option to bargain for an additional veiled item. They will drop a veiled item, or 3 if you have the bribery node allocated. And it will properly drop as veiled because it is not a monster drop and it is not a chest drop. It is counted as what I'm currently labeling it as a reward drop. It is a reward, and therefore does not get punished by being scoured. Okay, how do we use that information? Very effectively, actually, because you need to work out a number of problems in a league like this. One, how do you solve getting your currency? One of the things that I talked about earlier is that you feel this in the early game. You feel this modifier the most when you need alterations and transmutes. When those are materials that you are suffering on, identified and unidentified rare and magic items that you then vendor are actually your best source of each of these resources. And that showed very heavily in our leveling. And the way around that was suffering. Quite frankly, you just killed more to drop more loot. And just cope with the fact that you might be like me and not get an alteration to drop until Act 5 is what it is, right? In terms of actually getting your gear drops, or, getting your gear improved, because I needed that alteration to buy a gem. In terms of getting your gear upgraded, I mean, there are essences all throughout the campaign. This league, we have, settlers like Calgura, which allows us to do shipments to get gear as well as currency. And so using those two things were how I kind of like worked my way around this problem in the campaign. Now, additionally, by the way, just as a shout out to the campaign before I move on to other parts of the game, is that the campaign does have a number of quests that give you rare items, right? Act 2, you get a belt or a flask from the Den quest. In Act 3, there is the amulet from Diala. In Act 4, I do not believe there's a rare item in Act 4. Somebody can correct me on that if I'm entirely wrong. I just didn't remember one from when I played. Act 5, you get a ring and a jewel pretty easily from just doing normal questing. 6, 7, 8, and 10, you get a 4-link item going from, I believe it is, boots, gloves, helmet, then chest piece from normal questing, as well as Act 9 giving you one from normal questing. You get an item in the weapon slot, which I do not believe that is guaranteed to be 4-linked if it is a 2-hander. I just believe it is a rare weapon that you can use. There is also the ring quest in Act 8 from the Vol lookalike in the bathhouse. There is the rare accessory, I believe it's belts and amulets only, from the quest that you get in Act 6 to go do the Hailrick area. Again, why am I blanking on the name? I don't know, but that area over there has a rare item for you in it, right? So there's a number of places you can actually get forced rares to go alongside, the little bit of currency drops that you do get. And then you just have to figure out how to solve other related currency drop problems. And once you get to mapping, this becomes a little bit easier, right? Because, you're struggling to get even like bench crafts put onto your gear to make it a little bit better, right? And to get around that, well, mapping just generally will generate you more currency. As you get into higher level zones and killing more monsters, they just drop you more currency. That's just step 1 to this thought process. But 2 is that in mapping, you can start to invest in mechanics that solve these problems. So instead of running a usual Atlas rushing strategy that I ran, we ran a modified version that, prioritizes the couple points put into getting essences on the tree first, so that we have a way to turn items into rares. Maybe you take early harvest investment so that you can use 50 juice at a time to roll some of those rares that don't roll too favorably, right? You invest in Nico because Sulfite nodes can drop the card Society's Remorse. Society's Remorse gives you, 10 alterations when you turn it in, which is massive for you to get some alterations early on in order to actually roll your flask. Another tip related to flask is that you are really trying to roll flask, you should transmute every flash drop you get to, hope that it hits the suffix that you want or the prefix that you want, right? That's an option that you have available to you, and it's one that we used pretty funnily to make sure that we could try to supplement this problem, right? I mentioned how to solve villain items already through that method, but I didn't talk about how you solve getting this exclusive crafts, because what I did not mention earlier is that the bargaining for additional villain items will never drop member exclusive. Remember, I specified earlier that it is not a drop from the unit themselves, and therefore does not actually drop with the tag, say, Elrion's Veil, if you're looking for the minus cost on Ringcraft. Instead, the method of getting that is through Leo in Research. Leo in Research can give you a chest full of member exclusive betrayal items, so that you still can get those crafts, just in a really fucked up way, but it was doable. You can do Katarina and still get her crafts through Kate of Coolermac dropping specifically. You get the +2 supports craft still on her staff. Nothing else she drops can drop that though, because she does not drop rare weapons anymore. They all get scoured, remember? You might be thinking, what about fractured items? I said that the conversion still goes through before the scouring happens. So the item becomes fractured and then gets scoured. What happens when you scour a fractured item? It's a magic item. So you just drop an unID'd fractured magic item. That's awesome. We still get our fractures. Delve, as far as I know, does not actually function because Delve reward boxes are considered chests, the same way that Blight boxes are considered chests, or Heist boxes are considered chests, and therefore none of them drop rares. But Heist still gives you rares in the curio at the end of a blueprint, for example, if you see one, right? There are ways around this. If you want more gear, right? Because now we're going to talk about how you solve the gearing problems. I mentioned Essence already. I mentioned Harvest. I talked about how to get the crafts that you're missing. Another major 2 methods to talk about. 1, King's March. The shipments do bring back pretty well rolled gear if you know what you should be sending off. For example, I'm looking for a bow. It's Crimson Ore and Crimson Ore ingots to, I believe that is Ponder. It's either that or Te'anui. It's on my sheet somewhere. Like, you send things there to get weapons, to get dex weapons back, right? So those are bows, claws, etc. You know, you want ward gear. That shit comes back rare, right? These are ways to force rares. ROG is even more ridiculous in this regard. The black market is still fully capable of producing incredible rares, right? These are all methods that we can still get that are not considered monster drops. Fossil crafting still works. The list is actually really long of the ways that you can still get your hands on rare items to gear your character in. It's just might not always be immediately a rare. It's just all the different crafting currencies that we have available to us. Now, in talking about solving the wide variety of problems that I've thought about so far in the league, I need to hit a couple very notable exceptions to this rule and 1 or 2 that I'm still testing. The major exception to a lot of this, or not exception, but one that's a little weird and will strike you as odd, is Delirium. I mentioned earlier that like reward tiles on a Legion mob will not actually drop rares, even if it could, because that's a reward tile, but it's on a monster. And so it counts as monster drop loot. This is not true in the case of Delirium because your reward tiles are dissociated from monsters or chests. They just drop. And therefore, I have a lot of rare jewelry that I've just dropped from doing Delirium while farming for my clusters, which also can drop pre-rared because they can drop from the mechanic itself as opposed to just the monsters. The ones from the monsters drop as normal items, but the ones from the mechanic drop rare in magic a lot of the time, right? So all this to say, there's a lot of strange things that really came out of playing the game in this way. I didn't really mention influence bases yet, but rest assured, influence bases still exist. They are just pre-scoured. So F to totem builds, you will have to roll your +1 totem on your Shaper Shield out yourself, but otherwise, like, it's still perfectly fine. You still get all of your bases, even if you're doing stuff like the domination scare of apparitions farm, right? You still get all of those rare. Those like influence bases. They're just bases, right? That was a lot, right? There's a lot going on in this league, and there's all sorts of things I really haven't tested yet. Like I mentioned that there's some things I still want to test. I have not actually tested what incubator drops do. I suspect that incubator drops are counted as a chest drop and not a reward drop, but you know, I have to test that still to see like if it actually is just, it could just be a reward drop. You also end up with stuff still happening like double anointed items or pre-anointed items from like talismans or blight bosses with the nodes clicked respectively. Those do actually still function. They are just normal items, right? You go into like a Ball Temple, for example, and you still get the double corrupted item. It's just normal instead of rare. You still get the possibility though, for example, from like Ultimatum to actually just drop the item as a rare that has a double corruption on it. It's very strange. It's consistent, but strange. You know what I mean? As long as you can kind of sort of wrap your head around the rules. And that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this today. I just thought this was a really cool experience that I've gotten to have over the past couple of weeks. Like, you know, taking it very casually. Like we're getting ready to lock in a little bit more because I want to like finish this character or like go back to really working on this character that I'm playing in there because I'm having a blast with the power siphon character. I want to see if I can like really push it to its more logical extreme in terms of like what it can get up to, what would actually make me like proud of the character. But I felt like I should just like share with you guys this experience as far as like what actually catalyzed me going. You don't really need rare drops almost at all in PoE anymore. Like I've kind of just been able to work around it, and I have not noticed a real dent in my ability to progress the game at all as a result of this change. That said, well, change, modifier. Change sounds like a thing got patched in the game. Nothing got patched. Change was a weird word there. Anyways, I think that's everything for me. You know, if you enjoyed the video, again, you know, support the video, all that stuff. If you want to see me when I'm live on Twitch or connect with me in Discord, those links are in the description down below, as well as, you know, just the usual heads up. If you're catching on stream, I might not always be streaming PoE. Right now, I'm kind of in a PoE mood. Again, like I said, I'm fixing up a character, but I know there are, you know, releases that I'm interested in coming up that I might just pop on stream anyways. You know, first Ascendance Guided update coming. If you're a D4 intro, that's coming up next week. Torchlight's at the end of the month. You know, whatever it may be. So that stuff may be happening. If you want into the private league, that it's still ongoing, and you can get access to that in my Discord or through my Twitch, my stream. Anyways, that's it for me. If you guys have any thoughts about the private league, or if you have any questions about it, really like any other things you want to know about how it works, or information that you just want to share with me from your own experiences in a league like this in prior patches and whatnot, feel free to share that as well. I'm just genuinely curious about, you know, the whole the system. Thank you guys for watching and listening, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.